will
All right. Well,
do
if
that.
you want to take off, that's cool too. Either way,
I
I'm
will
good.
hang out with you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. My name is Liam Randall, and I am a longtime open source person. I'm coming to you live from Los Angeles at KubeCon, where I will be around if anybody in the community is here and wants to hang out or touch base about all the great things that are happening in Cloud Custodian or find out ways to get involved. You can hit me on Twitter at Hectaman or on Slack or wherever is convenient. I'd love to hang out and see you. But today, we're going to talk about continuous compliance with Cloud Custodian. So I thought I'd start with a quick definition because continuous compliance was something that some of us talked about for a long time, but the recent executive order from the White House really put it at the top of everyone's minds. And continuous compliance is this ongoing process of managing and identifying your governance position to ensure that your regulatory compliance and contractual commitments are met. So as opposed to doing, scheduled compliance, where weekly you're looking at some sort of control, or quarterly compliance, where you're auditing things at time, you want to design systems that are, in theory, automated. And Cloud Custodian, using the techniques that John just discussed that we're going to review here as an overview, enables real-time continuous compliance. It's what makes it so powerful. Now, I think one common perspective that we hear out talking to various enterprises in the community is do you need continuous compliance? Oftentimes organizations will have some regulatory or contractual commitment. They want to meet their SOC 2 or something, and they'll align to, say, NIST SP 853 or the CSP, CSF, the NIST CSF, the Cybersecurity Framework, which is where this is from. And this is represents a continuum of activities that you would do over a period of time. First, you'd identify all your things, then you'd want to have protective controls, and then detect, respond, and then recover. And people will say, well, hey, I am already doing protection. I check all my things in CI/CD, all my infrastructures of code. No one can deploy right to my cloud environment. And that is a great place to start. Prevention is wonderful. But what we're really going to talk about today is the oftentimes now requirement to have things like continuous compliance, but also the why behind them. Because stopping bad things from happening is only the first part of the journey. Making sure that you can still detect, respond, and recover those things is powerful and something that you should consider in your enterprise as well. Now, I think if you've been hanging out all day, you've probably, depending on where you are in your personal custodian journey, you probably understand that Cloud Custodian can operate in essentially two different modes here. In the first mode, we sort of have a pull mode where you're going door to door and you're talking to resources one at a time and you're asking them for information and you're evaluating that against some criteria, and then you're making a decision as to whether or not you alert or respond or kick off a workflow. But as John just discussed, there is a really powerful mode called event mode, in which case, as activities are happening in your environment, as opposed to using the queryable API, you have the ability in order to receive real-time events. So think of this as a phone call that comes to Scriptland whenever something happens that you're interested in. So you could get a new phone call that there's a new host or a new S3 bucket, or that some other sort of activity has happened. And this can be configured in a way to kick off a workflow. So when we're thinking about continuous compliance, you can evaluate these events in real time and route them to various cloud or third-party integrations, to logging, to email, to tagging, or in some cases, even auto remediation, depending on what your choices and what your workflow particularly is. Now, how big of an opportunity is this exactly? If you've been listening today, you understand, and if you're using the cloud, you know how quickly and frequently the cloud providers are updating their APIs. But just to talk about what's supported in Cloud Custodian itself, there are over 199 unique resources supported today on AWS. That's resources like S3, RDS, and so forth. There are 76 unique resources on GCP, 61 unique resources on Azure, 16 draft early for Kubernetes, and 5 for OpenStack. So there are a tremendous amount of things that you can instrument. Now, on a given resource type, you sort of have an asset lifecycle where you think about the resource being created, It could have, say like a storage mechanism, retrieval, it's used, and then maybe it's disposed of. It's shut down, it's deleted, it's backed up. It's something along those lines. And this would apply for EC2s or RDS or even Lambdas or IAM roles or something like that. And across the life cycle, for each individual resource, you have a huge number of opportunities to engage that resource in a continuous compliance motion. So for example, with AWS S3, you have 29 unique actions that you can hook into in script land, leveraged and combined with 21 unique filters. So you have a real granularity on what you choose to integrate into and continuous, set up some sort of continuous compliance with, or some event mode policies. Now with RDS, just as a second example, you have 25 unique actions with 20 different filters. And then the filters and actions are different on a resource by resource basis, because resources have a different sort of operational life cycle. Some things can be created and are immutable. Other things can be created and updated and sort of have their own life cycle there. But the larger point still remains. For every single one of the hundreds of resources that are supported by Cloud Custodian, you have multiple opportunities across the life of the resource, from when it's created to when it's used, when it's updated, to all the way when it's disposed of or deleted, in order to think about engaging for your policies. Now, when we talked about the definition of continuous compliance, we talked about engaging in a real-time monitoring of your governance. Well, what do we mean by governance? Well, what we really mean by governance is that for each one of these resource types, there is a compass of activities that you need to think about monitoring. So for example, you might think about the security for your S3. You might think about the cost optimization for your S3. You might think about your compliance and contractual commitments for your S3. You might think about your operational best practices for your S3, like maybe before you delete something, you back it up and hold it for a few weeks to prevent something from accidentally being removed, or for compliance reasons or regulatory reasons. So as an example, for compliance, this is a little example that looks at VPC flow logs not being enabled, something that you can put in real time as VPCs are created, and understanding, is this in line, or is this are these things being created? From an operational point of view, perhaps you would like to know when there's root logins. And kick off some sort of activity, maintain a record, notify somebody, open up a ticket somewhere. Those are all things that you could integrate with. From a cost optimization perspective, perhaps you're marking or automatically taking action on an RDS. If you look at the Cloud Custodian manual under RDS, there's a wonderful little example there of spinning down unused resources after a period of time and days and opportunities to engage the resource owner across the life cycle. Now, the question still remains, though, is do you really need continuous compliance with Cloud Custodian? If you have this infrastructure as code that comes out of your CI/CD, I would say absolutely, because unfortunately, there are still many other ways that you can still have your infrastructure modified. There's always the ability to break glass and do some sort of administrative action in every organization I've ever worked with. You have people that may have administrative privileges to act from the console or from a command line client, or you may even have, unfortunately, unauthorized modifications, as we've seen in a number of breaches. So what I thought we would do, like every interesting talk, we're going to do a little stunt hacking, right, to sort of drive this point home here. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with a fake company called PersonFacts and a website here. And we're going to have this web app deployed. And unfortunately, the web app has SQL injection in it. So through the stunt hacking, we're going to have the user or the hacker actually start modifying your infrastructure outside of your CI/CD. And then we're going to use a Cloud Custodian in order to show how continuous compliance with Cloud Custodian can help you to run more resilient and secure infrastructure. Okay, so let's set up this a demo a little bit more here. Now, what's interesting about this particular demo is it happens at the nexus of multiple resource types. So we're going to have an EC2 that is configured with an overly permissive IAM role. So the EC2 itself is going to have administrative credentials here. And if you're not familiar with the sort of interplay, this kind of comes back to those life cycles of what is supported on a per resource basis. So for example, with IAM, SNS and EC2 and S3 and KMS support IAM. So when those events happen, you have the IAM information there at your fingertips for any individual resource. So this detection will happen at the intersection of EC2, of the network policy to say that it's public, and the IAM role itself. So without any further ado, let's tempt the demo gods and do some live stunt hacking. And I think if there's anything we need to get started, it might be some background music. So I don't know if you guys are going to be able to hear this or not. I don't know if somebody give me a thumbs up on chat. Yeah. Can I just hear the stunt hacking music, or can you guys hear it too? George, anybody?
I do not hear music.
Well, I hear this amazing stunt hacking music. I'm playing Kavinsky's Pacific Coast Highway, so it's got a great little opener. So if anybody wants to throw that onto the background, that's what I've got going on here. Now I feel like a real hacker. You know, I've got my music here. So I'm visiting this website called personfacts.com. Everybody see my screen okay? And Person Facts gives you the best person facts. They're smart, gorgeous, they're insanely fast, and of course, they're got a bunch of great quotes. They're a really hot startup. But unfortunately, when Person Facts deployed this custom web app here, they didn't realize that they deployed it with a web shell here. And what that means is that if you can see up in the URL here, that you have the ability to pass parameters that are then just executed on the host. So let me pull the host up here, and I'll sort of pull this back and forth in real time. So if I do pass the command ls here, I'm doing an ls of where this is executing out of. So if I look at my actual session, actually we'll do maybe a split screen here. All right, so, all right. So I can see what's happening now. It's happening now. We're going all space balls on this. All right. So let's get to get some hacking done here. And I went ahead and prepared a few commands in advance to help speed this up. So the first thing I'm going to do as the attacker is I'm going to download the AWS utilities to this box here. So I'm going to pass in a parameter that uses curl in order to download things to this remote box here. Okay, so it's downloading in the background. And if we look, boom, we just downloaded the zip file here. And then I'm going to pass a command in order to unzip the command here. And I'm going to unzip this to this local directory on the server. And then I'm going to install the AWS CLI. Now, before this might happen in a real hack, you can see here's the output of zip here. And if we look on our server, we can see that, boom, now there's this AWS directory. And I could walk through this procedure of doing the install and, sort of, doing a little reconnaissance on the box here. So for example, I might use the local metadata service here in order to inspect the remote environment here on the hack. So if you look, I can see I've got an AWS IAM role, and I might go ahead and look at security groups or whatever the case would be. Now, in this case, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to describe the AWS security group that is sitting here on this particular account. Okay. And you can see here that I've got 8080 open just to my subnet here. Thank you. So unless you're sitting in the /24 at the JW Marriott, I don't think that you're going to be playing along. But if you are, have at it. I think it would be great. We can race to the bottom here before I shut this thing off. And you can see I've got port 22 and port 8080 open to this particular box. Now, to sort of speed up this demo a little bit and slow down the sort of reconnaissance, I'll leave some of that to your imagination. I'm going to go ahead and just add an additional, whoops, hello. That was a little mispaste there. Let me just repaste that. Gotta love the demo gods, right? All right, so I'm modifying the AWS security group to open up port 8081 to this box. So I've now modified this remote cloud environment. And if I visit this remote website, I find that there is another website running here, which is, of course, the Jurassic Park GIF about life finding a way. And I think if there was any sort of a reason to describe the why you absolutely need ongoing real-time continuous compliance with Cloud Custodian, it's simply because life, it finds a way. And that just as hackers and administrators, people make mistakes, and mistakes happen. So if you're a large organization and you're operating in the cloud, the sort of lesson learned here is that that it's not just, even if it's not a requirement, it might be a good idea, as a large organization, you really have to have defense in depth. You need controls that are both preventative and detective. And if you can't see something, you can't govern it. And when you look at how broad Cloud Custodian covers so many different resource types across the life cycle of those resource types, you sort of begin to understand that if you don't govern an asset class from its birth to its disposition, you may be missing out on critical opportunities to be well governed. So modern organizations not only need continuous compliance, but they need continuous compliance with Cloud Custodian. Thank you very much for your time today. My name is Liam Randall, and I'm at KubeCon all week. I'd love to have a chance to hang out and get to know you a bit. I guess, George, we'll open up for some questions.
For sure. Questions are now opening in Q&A.
Or trolling, whatever anyone prefers.
Or trolling. I do have because there is a delay between when the questions are posted and by the time we see them. In that first slide, you kind of mentioned where people are with the pull model and then trying to get to that real-time model. Do you have any insight on people who have taken that journey, or I don't want to say what's it take to get from A to B, because I know it's like a long-term process thing more than a technical thing.
I think what it really takes, George, that's a really great question, is a thorough risk assessment. Because it doesn't make sense just to start throwing up controls in your organization. As an organization, the first step is to sort of understand what's valuable to the organization and what are its impacts. And that sort of defines where you then start on your journey of putting up higher walls. If you had 3 buildings and one of them had the safe that had all of your gold in it, maybe that's where you would put the thicker doors and security cameras and the sort of ongoing monitoring that's there. So I really encourage people to think holistically about these things, because there are huge opportunities throughout your assets life cycles and your organizational life cycles to really raise the bar.
Sorry, just posting there that we're taking questions here or in Q&A in chat. You got a clap from John, so that's good.
That's a high bar.
AIS asks, has anyone made a Cloud Goater app like this, but with the breakdown of how to add rules to stop the misconfigs that lead to this stuff? Never found one yet in the C7N community.
I think that it's a deceptively simple problem to begin with. And that's partly because policy and security policies are sometimes local. Let me just say what I mean by that. Let's say that your organization allows uploading applications to some S3 bucket. Another organization might have a policy that does not allow that. So I think that how I would sort of counter that question is that how portable really is security? There's certainly some basics when we think about, is MFA turned on, and is complex passwords enabled that we can all sort of agree on and make portable. And the company that I work for, Stacklet, actually has policy packs that meet, I would say, most of your common controls there. But really, as soon as you get into the area outside of that, it is the flexible domain-specific language of Cloud Custodian that makes it so popular, because you can implement your policies, your workflows, your processes, your governance in a continuously compliant way. Did I answer your question okay? I totally agree with your statement. As policy is local, but people want reference examples. And I think what we're trying to do here as a team and as a community, and I would love your feedback on this, is if you look at the Cloud Custodian manual here, and please don't hear this as an RTFM comment. That's not what I mean at all. It's that we're trying to put a starter opportunity out here. I think what I can talk to Travis and the team is maybe a commercial organization like Stacklet could open up like a starter pack, my first policies or, some sort of common compliance thing in order to get going. And I love that you're interested in volunteering, and you got the man right here, George. I don't know which side is on for you. Is on this side for me to talk to about coming in and volunteering in the community.
Yeah, so I don't know if they were around for my presentation, but we definitely have avenues for you to add examples and things like that. And that's one of the things that we want to start working on as far as, hey, it's Friday, let's spend an hour, grab a bunch of policies, clean them up, toss them on a page. We can definitely do things like that. Let's see. Jameson's tossed a link in chat to some base policies. For AWS specifically in that one. I'm sure we have more. Let's see what else we have. David Shepard wants to add that the docs and CLI have so many examples. This is interesting. He means examples with intentionally vulnerable application. That might be an interesting.
Okay, so
I'm thinking a widget that shows busted and
Yeah, that is a great idea. Like the hacking demo that I just did, perhaps we could, release a set of rules that showed the detection for that. I actually meant to pull up the rule that does that real quick, and I did not do that on screen, so I can do that real fast here as I get logged in. As an example, to detect the over-permissioned resources, I did intend to actually walk through this. Thank you for the reminder. But here is the EC2 over-permission rule that we were just looking at a moment ago. And essentially what it's doing is it's doing, again, these cross AWS resource actions here. So we've got a handful of filters here where we're looking at something that does have a public IP, and then we're checking for a set of permissions that include some specific role types here. So that's a good example of a sort of like a walkthrough of, hey, how could we detect this kind of over permissioned abuse across resources or something like that.
Yeah.